Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are finally getting to my November 2022 wrap up. I know it is it has taken a while to get here. I am on today, I believe is day 8 of me working without a day off. I've had like one day off in the past 2.5 weeks. I am exhausted. I am going to the bar soft opening tonight that I've been working day and night to get opened. So then hopefully I've got like, I think 5 days in a row of, including today, like 5 days in a row of just like holiday work. And then I have a day off, maybe 2 days off, one more day, and then I have my week off for Christmas. I am so exhausted. So I am so sorry that this has taken me so long to get here. I promise that things will be way more relaxed starting in January for me. This is like the big crunch time and I wasn't expecting any of this. I know I've spoken about this in a couple of my videos recently. So once all of the chaos has finally died down, I promise my videos will go back to being on a regular schedule, 2 to 3 times a week as they have been. I have a lot of really awesome things in store for 2023. I'm really excited about it. But I just need to get through this next week. But I am finally here to do my November wrap up. Even with all the chaos, I was able to get through 5 books that month. My goal for the year was 6. Kind of had to give that up once I saw my workload. So the last couple months, I think I'm only going to be getting to 5. So 5 is my goal for December as well. But I do have that week off, so hopefully I can read a ton then. But yes, let us dive in. Let us dive in. So the first book that I read was Throw Me to the Wolves by Lindy Ryan and Christopher Brooks. I do have an entire in-depth review on this on my channel. I will link that for you guys. This was the first book that Unplugged Bookbox did in like their upcoming, I don't know if I want to call it a series, but they're doing like they're designing their own hardcover limited edition books for subscribers. And they're doing that as well with Twisted Retreat, both their adult and young adult boxes. So there's a whole handful of books. I have all the ones for the adult and Twisted Retreat boxes. The books are absolutely beautiful. I just started another one of their books today, actually. Boom. Like, absolutely gorgeous. I am like blown away by how beautiful these books are. And obviously because they are so beautiful, I really, really want to read them. This is interesting. This is kind of a werewolf detective, maybe witchcraft story. I don't know. This book is kind of all over the place. I'm going to read the inside flap for you guys. So it says, 10 years ago, a witch sacrificed Britta Orchid's family and turned her into a werewolf. Selena Stone's spell failed, and she was never seen again until now. Officer Aaron LeBay has discovered Selena's remains in the house where Britta's family died and dragged Britta back to Louisiana to aid the investigation. Hoping her past will break the case, Britta has a hard time resisting the handsome rookie, especially when he shows her a new drawing by her murdered little brother, Britta in her wolf form. As an unseen hand sets events in motion, Britta has to help LeBay dig into the murders old and new. The bloodthirsty ghost of her brother, a jealous member from her pack, and a former friend with a serious prejudice against wolves all stand to stop Britta as she fights to finally get the truth about that night 10 years ago. But as she looks harder than ever into her own dark past, Britta will confront more than just her own demons as she fights for peace for herself and for her family. She can't hide anymore, but she must find her place in a world she's avoided and discover what it truly means to be a wolf. This book started off very strong and very promising, and I was really on board for it for the almost entire first half. And then it got really, really complicated and overly complex, and I feel like this book would have benefited way more if they put everything that was in it into like a series, because they tried to cram so much into like, I think it's like 250 pages, 230 pages, and it just felt really jam-packed and like 2 different stories in one. I'm very picky when it comes to werewolves, especially because there's not a lot of literature and media out there about them. So I like to stick with werewolf lore. I think it's interesting when you build a world where changing the lore kind of elevates the book or changes the book or helps push the plot forward. The changes in lore in this did nothing for me. It actually made it extremely confusing and added just layers and layers of plot holes to this whole novel overall. And I just had problems with it. This was a 3-star read for me. I did enjoy reading the first half of this book. I didn't feel like I needed to DNF it or anything, even though as it got really weird and confusing and all over the place. Don't think I liked our main character too much looking back on this book. She's very arrogant and set in her ways, and even when evidence of something being true is right in front of her, she is completely in denial of it. So, I don't know. I thought this was a fun read, would not read it again. Definitely not high on my recommendations list, primarily because it was just so much. I don't know if it was a murder mystery or a witchcraft story or a romance. It was just so all over the place with werewolves thrown in. And I just feel like the werewolf portion of this book was just so added on as an afterthought almost. It just felt very difficult. Like, I feel like you could tell this was written by two different authors because there were two different plots that were trying to be presented and they did not mesh well together. But again, beautiful book. Very happy I own it because it is so absolutely stunning. And very interesting and original concept. I just think it was too much all at once. Alright, next up is We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix. I do also have a full in-depth review on this book. This, I think, gets me to have read all of the novels that Grady Hendrix has written, so I'm, like, super pumped for his upcoming novel, How to Sell a Haunted House. I'm going to read the back real quickly. It says, every morning Chris Pulaski wakes up in hell. In the 1990s, she was lead guitarist of Dirtwork, a heavy metal band on the brink of breakout success, until lead singer Terry Hunt embarked on a solo career and rocketed to stardom, leaving his bandmates to rot in obscurity. Now Chris works as a night manager of a Best Western. She's tired, broken, unhappy. Then one day, everything changes. A shocking act of violence turns her life upside down, and now she begins to suspect that Terry sabotaged more than just the band. Chris hits the road, hoping to reunite Dirtwork and confront the man who ruined her life. Her journey will take her from the Pennsylvania Rust Belt to a celebrity rehab center to a satanic music festival. A furious power ballad about never giving up, We Sold Our Souls is an epic journey into the heart of conspiracy-crazed, pill-popping, paranoid country that seemed to have lost its very soul. So this was a 4-star read for me. I said this in my in-depth videos. I won't talk too much on this book. I really enjoyed the beginning. I thought the ending was cool. I hated the middle. And this... Please excuse the sirens. This whole book just read like a first draft to me. Like, there were a lot of cool and quirky ideas in here, but I just don't feel like it was fleshed out enough. There were a lot of storylines that I don't think were developed enough. There were a lot of storylines that I don't think were necessary. Grady Hendrix writing lyrics was so cringe. It was so cringe. But I did really enjoy reading this as a whole. Like, I had fun with this book. I personally think it's better than Horror Store and Final Girl Support Group. I know a lot of people will disagree with me on that. Do not think it is better than My Best Friend's Exorcism or A Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. That is always so hard to say. But it is fun. If you like Grady Hendrix and you're a diehard Grady Hendrix fan, read this because I think it fits in very nicely with where he is as an author and like what he's trying to do. The humor and the horror in this is definitely toned down in relation to his other works, but I did enjoy this. You definitely need a knowledge of like 80s and 90s metal to get like everything out of this book, but I did really enjoy it overall. Also, please ignore how like stuffy I sound. I've had the worst cold and I got it at the worst possible time, so I'm sure I sound pretty gnarly right now. But next up is They Drown Our Daughters by Katrina Monroe. This is a Poison Pen Press book, which is the same company that, or the same publishing company that does all of Darcy Coates' stuff. So I was really excited when I got this in my Unplugged book box, and I read it. I'm going to read the back of this for y'all really quickly. So it says, they say Cape Disappointment is haunted. That's why tourists used to flock there in droves. They'd visit the rocky shoreline under the old lighthouse's watchful eye and fish shells from water as they pretended to spot dark shapes in the surf. Now the tourists are long gone, and when Meredith Strand and her young daughter return to Meredith's childhood home after an acrimonious split from her wife, the Cape seems more haunted by regret than any malevolent force. But her mother, suffering from the early stages of Alzheimer's, is convinced the ghost stories are real. Not only is there something in the water, but it's watching them, waiting for them, reaching out to Meredith's daughter the way it has to every woman in their line for generations. And if Meredith isn't careful, all three women, bound by blood and heartbreak, will be lost one by one to the ocean's mournful call. So I was super into this book for the first like 2/3. I loved the weaving timelines. I loved being able to go back into like the Victorian era and the 20s and the 30s and the 70s and just all of the different eras that this curse, all of these different eras that had women who were affected by the curse and reading about their stories. I thought it was really cool. It made the story really interesting, and I loved how it then paralleled what was happening in modern times. I was so down for it. I thought the mystery was interesting, and just the town was creepy and spooky, and this like just small town, I think it was in like Washington State, really loved that, and was pretty on board for it. I will say it was a little long, and it felt that it dragged at some parts, but I was still really on board for the premise of this book. Then the book takes this really crazy sharp turn, and the setting moves itself from being in this tiny small town, I'm just gonna say, I don't want this to be a spoiler or anything, to an island. There's an entire section of the book on an island. And I hated every single thing about the island storyline. I thought it cheapened what Katrina Monroe was doing with the story. I thought it was just like kind of this like weird, inexplicable scenario. They really banked on supernatural in ways beyond just the ghost story and the curse. It really went all overboard. It created tons of plot holes, and it was just such a shift in tone from the entire rest of the book, and I hated everything about it. I really, really despised it. It made the book really difficult for me to get through. I didn't want to read any of those chapters. I just hated the sudden divergence to this entire scenario, and I hated pretty much all of the characters involved in that scene. I feel like some of them are supposed to be super, super evil, and some are supposed to be super, super sympathetic, but like the line is so gray between that I kind of just ended up disliking all of them equally for however many reasons I could think of. And it just really cheapened the entire novel for me and made me not care at all about the ending. I felt like there were a lot of unresolved storylines due to how this book took that narrative turn, and then focused on something just completely different than what we had. And I wasn't thrilled with it. I really, really was into this book for the first, like 2/3, and then once that hit, it just tanked the whole book for me. That entire section of the book was like a 1-2 star read for me, but because I enjoyed everything leading up to it, I kept this at a 3 star. I don't know if I said this before, but this was a 4 star. But yeah, this was very difficult for me to then get through towards the end, and I was able to breeze through the first like 100 pages of this book, and it took me forever to get through the last like 70 pages of this book. It was like such work to get through this book, and I just hated the direction it went in, and I really wish it hadn't, because I loved everything it set up, and then it just had this crazy just plot point that made no sense, wasn't explained, don't know why it happened, don't know how it happened, really don't care because I didn't want to read it anyway, and it just went all over the place. So that ended up being a 3 star read for me, which was very disappointing because I did love where it went beforehand. I don't know if I would pick up another book by Katrina Monroe. Maybe if I got one in a box I would read it, but I don't think I would ever go out of my way, just because I am scared that her thing is going to be creating these really cool, concise stories and then just lopping on like a weird out of left field climactic third ending, or third act, whatever you want to call it. All right, anyway, next up is Root Work by Tracy Cross. This was in my most recent Nightworms package. I'm going to read the back of the book. So it says, the year is 1889. Set in a small Louisiana parish deep in the segregated South, Root Work follows school-age sisters Betty, Ann, and Pee-wee during one life-changing summer when the 3 of them head off to stay with their hoodoo-practicing aunt, Theodora. A powerful woman feared by the local townspeople, she teaches the girls the secrets of her craft, like how to make hot foot powder and how to whip up some goofer dust to get back at an enemy. The girls delight in their harmless hoodoo adventures until a tragic event involving the town's racist sheriff promises to change their lives forever. Story of love and redemption, Root Work explores the strength of family and the darker side of the heart. I wanted to love this book. I wanted to love this book. I thought the concept was awesome. I loved the idea, the setting, just everything about the premise of this book. I thought I was going to devour this book. This book is so short. It's less than 200 pages. It's 176 pages. This took me like a week to read. I hated this. And this like crushes my soul because I really, 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 really wanted to love this. But this was so difficult for me to get through. The way the story is written stylistically is very confusing. Different chapters are told through different perspectives. A lot of the story is told through dialogue, but the way the dialogue is structured, it makes it really difficult to figure out who is talking. Like a lot of times there isn't a, and this character says after it. But it's not like a back and forth conversation between two people. There'll be like 3 or more people in the conversation. So it becomes very, very difficult to follow who is saying what. And a lot of the issues I had with this is a lot of characters are saying important things to other characters, but everything gets muddied when I don't know who is saying what or why. Stylistically, again, it went from kind of this like narrative telling through the perspective of the girls to almost like this poetic sonnet style. Not sonnet, but like it was done in like stanzas. They had all these like interludes of chapters between the 3 daughters of this story, told in these like strange stanzas. And it was just very, very confusing. And I didn't understand why it happened. I didn't mind it per se, but just with all of the other stylistic choices and always like kind of having to piece together who was saying what and why, it just became very, very difficult. The other thing is a main core of this plot is we have this villain. And he becomes a villain for a lot of things that are implied and happen off screen. And because everything that happens off screen is heavy, 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 heavy implications and not seen or like outright told to us, it becomes really, really difficult to see that the bad guy of the story is actually the bad guy. I would have liked a lot more of like showing his negative actions versus the telling and like subtle implications, and then a lot of characters kind of towards the end of the novel reveal a lot of negative things that this person has done, but I feel like there was no build up to it. Like the villain gets villainized and revenge is sought, but the revenge doesn't feel justified until the author has put towards the end of the book a lot of reasons why that is. And that to me was really hard because I was so confused as to the motivations. And I'm not sure if that's supposed to reflect what these kids are going through. But it was just really confusing for me. And the kids are kind of told that, oh, like an injustice happened to you. And your family members were able to carry out getting justice for that injustice. But they didn't think it was enough. And it's kind of this idea of an eye for an eye. That is a plot point that happens. One eye is taken, metaphorically, so another eye from somebody else is taken. And then the characters are mad that not more is done. And I thought that was really weird because the eye for an eye justice system happens, but then the people who were initially wronged want to take even more. And then they use that as the motivation to create a villain. And for me, it was just like, I needed more from that storyline to buy what happens to that character at the end. Because I just found it utterly over the top, and almost like torturous and cruel. And if there had been actions that that character had taken leading up to it in the novel and not just said retrospectively, I feel like I would have understood the book more. But it was really, really hard for me to understand that book through that perspective. Like, I understand what Tracy Work was doing with that. It was just not conveyed in a way that was effective for me. And I really wish that there had been even more implications or more actions taken by that character so that when we got to that horrific climactic scene at the end, it made sense. Because at the end, it just kind of made our main characters take on this almost evil air, and I don't think that's what Tracy Work was going for. So I had some issues with that. So this was a 2-star read for me, just because stylistically I couldn't get behind it, and I just don't think that the story was there to justify the climactic ending. The climactic ending was very terrifying to read. Like, that was a very effective horror scene, but it didn't have the buildup it needed to be effective in the overall narrative. I don't think it evoked the reaction from the reader that Tracy Work was intending, because a lot of the justifications for that scene happened during that scene or retrospectively. So that is all that I will say on that. And then next up is Cackle. I do also have a full in-depth review on Cackle by Rachel Harrison. This was a 4-star read for me. I'm going to read the back of the book for y'all really quickly. All her life, Annie has played it nice and safe. After being unceremoniously dumped by her longtime boyfriend, she seeks a fresh start. Annie accepts a new teaching position and moves from Manhattan to a small village upstate. She's stunned by how perfect and picturesque the town is. The people are all friendly and warm. Her new apartment is dreamy too, aside from the oddly persistent spider infestation. Then Annie meets Sophie. Beautiful, charming, magnetic Sophie, who takes a special interest in Annie and wants to be her friend. More importantly, she wants Annie to stop apologizing and start living for herself. That's how she lives. Annie can't help but gravitate towards the self-possessed Sophie and begins to spend more and more time with her, despite the fact that the rest of the townsfolk seem a little afraid of her. And like, okay, there are some things. Sophie's appearance is uncanny and ageless. Her mansion in the middle of the woods feels a bit unearthly, and she does seem to wield a certain power. But she couldn't be, could she? So again, I'm not going to talk to you too much on this because I do have a full video on it. Okay, so my camera is totally like cut out this entire section, which is awesome because I have no time to be doing this. But this was an interesting read for me because I enjoyed reading this book the way I enjoy binge watching CW TV shows. I thought this was really unique and interesting. I loved the tone. I loved the setting. It was so cute and cozy and charming. And kind of like the lightheartedness of this story. But at the end of the day, this is a story about two very self-centered women and the toxic relationships that they are dependent upon. And so I don't think it really had a good message at the core of it, but I did really, really enjoy reading. I did enjoy reading this plot. I don't know if I agree with the ending. I do think the ending is like very anti-feminist and very negative. I don't know if that was meant to be like the horror part of this like horror story. This book isn't scary at all, but it does have some really creepy and disturbing undertones. Yeah, and it's just a book filled with an unlikable ending and two very unlikable characters, and our one main side character also becomes very despicable as well. But I enjoyed reading this. It's almost like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where like none of the characters in that book are good, or in that TV show, are good people, yet for some reason you feel compelled to keep watching what happens to them. And that's probably because it's a comedy. But I'm not sure if you're supposed to like these people, and I feel like Rachel Harrison might have intended us to like them, but I can't. They were just despicable. But her tone and her writing was great, which makes me want to read more from her and see what else she does. Because this was a fun read. Like, I want to have like a blanket and a cup of tea and read this. It was like lighthearted for most of it, and then like very dark beneath the surface. It wasn't really what it appeared to be, and I think the ending really nailed how just truly dark this book actually is. But it's a fun witch book. It's an evil witch book. And I don't think it was advertised quite that way for me. I think I had to really unravel it as I was reading it. But I enjoyed it. It did teeter between being a 5-star read and a 3-star read for me. The ending definitely cut all chances of that 5-star read, and some of the messages that are thrown throughout the book really kept it close to that 3-star rating. But again, if you're really interested in hearing my thoughts on this, I do have the entire full video, and I don't want this video to be like 1,000 minutes long. So definitely check that out if you were interested. But yes, this was a 4-star read for me, and I've never felt this way about a novel before. It was very, very strange for me. It's very bittersweet because I really loved aspects of it and I really hated other aspects of it. So there you go. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I try to post 2 times a week, hopefully Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. Hopefully in January I will be back to that schedule. If you enjoyed these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah.